Yeah.
Okay. Oh, all right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this Facebook Live about the book called Being Fine, the Other F Word. Uh, I'm Kapil. I'm one of the co-authors in the book, and we have Mike here, who's also one of the co-authors, and Joe, who is the publisher and the editor, and Joe created the concept. So we want to talk a little bit about the book and our experiences. And I don't think Mike has done Facebook Live before this Facebook Live. So the idea is to interview Mike and hear his story. Um, so, hi, Mike. Hi, Joe. How are you?
Hi, Kapil. Really good, thank you. How are you doing?
Good, good, good. I think Mike has a little bit of delay now. Mike,
Oh,
can you hear us?
yeah, he doesn't look that serious for very long normally. He's normally very
Well,
chirpy. It's
yeah.
this time of night, isn't it? It's a little bit of a challenge, and all the kids are at home from school, which is not helpful.
Yeah, yeah. Well, while we wait for Mike to come back, why don't you start and like how's the I mean, I think we've talked about the book quite a bit in the past as well. So maybe why don't you give an update on the book and oh hey Mike, you're back. I was just asking Joe to give our audience an update on where the book is at and what to expect and maybe give some background as well.
Yeah, cool.
Sounds good. Yeah.
So we're basically it's absolutely coming to the last couple of days when authors are submitting their very final versions. Some have submitted their first version and they're happy with it, and others are giving a little tweak because obviously I started the project 2.5 months ago, 3 months
Mm,
ago, properly launched it, and this is such a personal topic, and it goes to the core of who we are and our beliefs and our development actually and our progress. So some people have had to take a lot of time to write their chapters, and some have only just been able to do it. In fact, one author's dropped out today because he just can't quite
well,
do it, which does is testament to the fact that this book needs to be made because it is so personal, and there are so many men that's really struggled to share the word. Um, so it's coming together, and
mm,
I very thrilled to actually speak to someone. And thanks to you, I can't disclose his name yet, but we have someone who is once he's seen the book, he has to read the book first. He wants to write. He's going to write the foreword for it. So
amazing.
yeah, and he's an amazingly established author. He has so many followers and such a powerful message. He taps into very lots of different avenues that this book kind of supports. So I'm
Mm.
really thrilled about that. But I can't tell you yet, Mike, I'm afraid. I'll disclose it as soon as I can. So yeah, end of the week it will be finalised. It's then a point of laying it out and creating the layout and the how the book actually looks. Who comes first? So the chapters and who comes before who comes first, who comes last. All of that really matters to me when I create a book
Mm.
because I'm for me it takes a lot of thought and consideration about the journey the reader goes through because I want them to start reading it and not want to put it down. Although the chapters are like between about 2,000 words ish, I want them
Mm.
to open it and then literally go, oh my gosh, I've got to read the next one. And that requires a lot of thought and consideration for their journey because most of your stories are so personal and emotional, and so I'm trying to consider that with who comes next. And yeah, and then the final bit of news. So we're looking at publishing end of November, possibly beginning of December, but I'm aiming for the last day of November. But we're also going to have a little segment from Nikki Clark, and
Right.
she is the founder of My Black Dog. So I spoke to her on the phone. They're very thrilled. They had a big charity auction last week, raised £20,000. But
Amazing.
yeah, she's really on board with our book, and so she's going to write a segment probably for the end of the book. So the women are going to come at the end of this book. Oh
Mm.
no, we've lost Mike after
That's
all
Mike
my
again.
rambling when it was his turn to speak.
Yeah, well, yeah, before Mike comes back, just to remind everyone who's watching or who's going to watch this video, the book is about personal stories of about 15 uh, co-authors who have gone through an experience of like not being able to express their emotions and feelings, and then went through some kind of a change in their life to now realize that how important it is for men to be connected with our feelings and emotions, and then sharing their journey and their experiences, which I think is such an important topic right now. With, I think, generally speaking, because like mental health amongst men is such a like great topic right now to talk about, because especially in workplaces we are seeing um, so many sort of mental health itself, and also like suicide. I'm in a men's group, and recently um, and this is like there's about 6,000 men in this men's group on Facebook, and recently someone's wife like had a man post a post like a guy committed suicide, and it was literally that he didn't reach out and connect and ask for help. And it was such a reminder that like as men we got to be able to share our feelings and ask for help and ask for support and just connect with people. It's such an important thing. So I think it's such a timely um, subject, and the book, and I really hope that it will encourage men to share their feelings. Mike, hi, welcome back. Yeah, well, Mike, why don't you tell us like a bit about yourself, a bit about your story, and what inspired you to like be part of this project?
Yeah, sure. Hopefully the signal will be okay now. I've moved around, as it were. So just it's just listening to that piece. So and you speak, Kapil. I was one of those people who thought my life was all together and I would never have to face a crisis situation the way that you've just described it. And my story, if you will, is a fairly common one to many, in a sense that they suffer a marriage breakdown or relationship breakdown, and their whole world falls apart. And again, this is not something you expect to happen in life at all. This is something that happens to other people,
Right.
is it not?
Absolutely.
But what I found was that for something that is very common, actually, sadly, and I think it's a pandemic of our time, and there's a whole other series of issues related to that we could talk about. But my own personal story is basically that it took me to the very dark places that you've just described, that unfortunately happened to the individual that you've just described. I couldn't see any way out of it until I reached a breaking point, which is described in the book. And it wasn't the sirens coming to my door. It was me deciding to I need something immediate, in the sense of talking to somebody. And I chose to speak to my doctor. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Yeah.
Broke off for 5 seconds.
So I chose to speak to my doctor, and I suppose, if you will, had a consultation with him and was referred to a medical health consultant. And so I can only describe what happens from that point. That you're required to fill in some forms, and they do an NHS medical health assessment. And again, this is not a place I expected to find myself in, but it's very important to be very honest about answering the questions that they pose, because what they're trying to assess is how critical is your situation. And I'm afraid it does boil down to, and my experience was, how often have you thought about self-harm? How often have you thought about this? And what they're trying to assess is the frequency of that.
Mm.
Is it a month? Is it every fortnight? Is it every day? Is it every hour of every day? Or is it constant, continuous?
Mm.
But what that did also was give me an opportunity to speak to a medical health practitioner, and what I can only describe what happened then was a way forward for me in terms of self determination. So I'd hit the bottom, if you will, and there was only one way to go after that. But I was given leaflets to talk to the Samaritans. I was given leaflets to talk to people about cognitive therapy. But I have to say there really wasn't much help other than that.
Wow.
But the help I did got, in the way that I've described, helped me enormously, because I was not sleeping as well at all. I mean, not a wink of sleep for weeks, and the body can only stand that for so long. And so, as well as being in a mental turmoil situation, I was in in a bad way physically as well. So my story is really about that, and about how it's possible to reach out for help, and it's about how it's possible to come back from that. But it's also about something that happens very commonly to people, and in particular to men in relationship breakdown, which is that you are very, very isolated immediately that everything goes awry, and you're in a state of shock. You're in a place where you're trying to organize work, and if there are children involved, you're having to balance all of that, which in itself is very difficult. And why I got involved in the book is that Joe invited me. We connected through a series of networking that I guess that we'd both done, and we came together. And I'm on a kind of a mission to see what there is I can do to help. And I suppose one of the ways that I helped myself was to start writing about my experiences, to share it, which is what this project is all about, sharing. All too often as men, we clam up, we don't share, and therefore we don't help ourselves. Or instance, so yeah, I don't want to ramble on. I wanted to start with that. see if that helped.
Definitely.
Maybe you've got some other.
Well, I mean, it is. I think it's such a. You use the right word. Pandemic. It really is. I work with men quite a lot, and I talk to men in men's groups, and just generally in lots of like masculine summit and stuff like that. And I find that even today I was having this conversation about how like in our culture, and it's not necessarily just a men issue, but I think it's a lot of men I definitely see are running after success and achievement, and not really sort of connecting with who we are and what we want and how we want to live our life. And there's some kind of like a self-worth attached to it, in that once we get somewhere, we will be worthy. We will find our self-worth. And I see that both in relationship and also in our professional lives, where like our self-worth is tied up to the thing that we are running after. And I wondered if you have something to like, if you had any experiences around that as well, and how is it now for you? Like, what do you do now to keep your mental health and like stay positive and stay healthy in that way?
Oh, it's changed massively for me. I now eat much more cleaner, healthier than I did before. I focused on nutrition and exercise. But when I was back in the position that I was describing, I found myself developing what I would call a daily practice of trying to improve my own mental health, because I was ruminating and I was overthinking everything. And when you're in a relationship, marriage breakdown, you're having to sort out the finances and everything like that. And if it's been a long-term relationship, you overthink things. You try and go over past events. Did I make the right decisions? Did I say the right things? Etc. etc. And that's how the no sleeping situation started and got worse. But my daily practice was what we'd call meditation. But for me, it was just trying to calm the mind down and focus on not overthinking and trying to be in the moment and take control. So I was wrestling control actually of my overthinking and to some extent of my emotions, because you go through a whole plethora of emotions that you'd never felt before, some of which is anger,
Right.
and despair.
Mm-hmm.
And you list all the names and you're feeling them all at once, and it's coming at you very, very quickly. So my daily practice was what we recognize as meditation. I started to read a lot more. I was looking for men's help titles and books on the shelf that could help me. And I have to say, and that's another reason why I got involved in this book, is that I couldn't find anything really at all that was designed for me, that was going to help me, or that was recognizable. There was no one else talking about my situation.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of very light, kind of frivolous, journalistic type stuff. But there was nothing that I could find that was really meaningful, that got to the heart of the issues and the problems and the solutions that were going to help me. So I kind of had to work it all out by myself. And I think the really sad thing is that, as you said from the outset, not everybody gets there. And it does change you, because having been to that crisis point, having been to the low point, and having come out of it and developed and grown, and taken control, you do have a different look on life, and you don't sweat the small stuff anymore.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
really don't. And I was in corporate sales at the time. I was very thankful for work, because I could turn up to work and people would engage with me and I could talk to people. But outside of that, everything was in a dreadful mess for quite some time. But these events happened, quite a few years ago, and my life is very much better now and very balanced. And I have a new partner, etc. And in fact got married again for the second time 2 years ago. So
Congratulations.
it's but I still am exploring, as you can tell, why there was nothing for me there at that time when I needed it. There was literally nothing. There are lots of books, and Joe, I think you will recognize this, available for women to help their physical health, possibly now also with mental health. And as you know, one of the reasons for my breakup was what I believe, and well, I know actually from listening to the truth of my situation and searching for the truth of my situation, was that my wife had an extreme reaction to the menopause. But again, there was nothing available for me that spoke to men about that. And if it's no longer a taboo subject, then let's talk about it. But let's include men in the conversation, because if she's trying to work out what's going on with her, and she doesn't understand what's happening to her, and I believe also if her problems are exacerbated by chemically manufactured hormone, then the doctor needs to take some responsibility here as well. I think women have my daughter's 24, and I worry for her, because I do think that women now have a series of massive intrusions of chemical hormone throughout life. And it starts with the pill, and then it moves on to IVF treatment, which is about kickstart. So ironically, the pill is to prevent conception, and IVF treatment is to kickstart that. And then later in life, hormone replacement therapy is about maintaining the environment to maintain, the hormone balances of youth, if you will. So that's a massive seesaw of injections into the natural balances of the chemical hormone situation in the body. And not long ago, there was only avocado oil, thistle or nettle tea or something. Do you know what I mean? There was only natural solutions. Is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting. Sorry, I thought you were done. Do you want to say more?
No. I think I should stop there. I'm probably saying too much at this point.
No, I was just I was thinking, interestingly, I can relate to some of what you said, because I also went through like a long-term relationship, like marriage, and marriage broke up, and one of the things I realized, like how lonely I felt after the breakup, and not knowing what to do with all of those emotions. So I can relate to that for sure. And I was actually talking to Joe yesterday. I think we were talking about this thing that there's a lot of books on men's health which are around how to be in a relationship, how to get into a relationship. Like several psychologists and men's health book have been written about that kind of subject, but I don't know if there are any books that are men's own experiences in this way, like that other men can read and say, "Oh yeah, I can actually relate to that," and this is okay. Like it's okay to share the places where I'm stuck or where I'm not feeling good about my life or my experiences, and that I can ask for help. So I do feel that I think there's a need for more of this kind of thing to be talked about and written and everything. Joe, do you want to say something about that? Like in your experience, what have you found in your research?
Yeah, obviously when you start a book, you always research what's already there, what's coming out, and I need to dip in again and double check what's, things will have been published since I started looking. What I found was there were a couple of books that when men had really opened up about their mental health journey. There are celebrities, so Alistair Carmichael, for example, is someone recently who has opened up about his mental health issues and his journey. Frank Bruno, who I had a joy to meet, he is very much shared. But I'd say, and this is with love and light, and I don't mean it disrespectfully, but I'd say that they are the real extremes. Frank Bruno was sectioned, and he was at the height of his fame, and so I do think, in some respect, that I'm really grateful that these celebrities do share their stories, which helps create the momentum that it's okay to share. But it's important that actually people are sharing their journeys that aren't superstars or aren't,
Right.
professional sportsmen and women, and actually people that are just, like Mike, when you first shared with me your story of your wife who suffered from hormones, and how many women do not suffer from huge hormone imbalances? I know like a tiny amount of women that do not have huge peaks and troughs throughout their life, even if they're not on HRT, let alone if HRT comes into their lives. And again, I'm so grateful that you have come into this project, because it's creating these conversations and awareness, because HRT and that whole menopause, perimenopausal, is only just being talked about. So
Right.
for you to step into that now space and say, actually, let's not just talk about that for women, but let's talk about the impact that has on the partners, because that's the whole point of this, is that we're almost trying to be inclusive and really offer those kind of
Yeah.
the kind of moments to everyone to consider, actually, I'm entitled to feel neglected and worried and concerned and pushed out from my marriage, as my wife is screaming at me once again. These conversations and these points aren't made in very many books, like you said earlier. They're made in a very rough way and a kind of an overview way, but they're
Yeah.
not made specifically, and it's really important that they are.
So the mistake that I made, because I had no information, I mean, this is the personal thing, was to only see my partner the way she was, the person that I knew when she was, when, if you will, when we met. You could say I only ever saw, and I think this is typical for most men. It might be a surprise to women, but he only ever sees you as he's always seen you. And yet what he's faced with is something that is completely unrecognizable to him. And it's extremely worrying. It's worse than that. I think I said um, in my chapter that I realized that it was like witnessing somebody die, before my very eyes. And in many ways, of course, when you get involved in an acrimonious separation, part of you is like, well, it would have been a lot easier had that happened, actually. I mean, it's that traumatic, and you could liken it to, we know how painful it is to see somebody suffering from dementia for people. And I appreciate what you said there, Joe, because it's a difficult thing for me to talk to any woman about. But having said that, I've never found any woman clam up if I've wanted to talk about this, and I appreciate that. There's a spectrum of experiences. Some people can go through, the transition in life much easier than others. For other people, they're off the scale. And we know that HRT is an experiment. It was a lady doctor that told me that in the mid-60s it came into being. And it was a lady doctor who said to me, the experiment continues. The pharmaceutical industry got together with the medical profession and said, well, what happens if we give people hormones? What happens if we put the hormones back? Well, I don't know. Let's try it. So with half the population going through this major transition, there's a ready-made market there for big pharma, right? And this is the point where I should probably not get too carried away, but it's just not being talked about. And when I was in Relate, because we went to Relate, there was no recognition. I felt I would have benefited had somebody sat me down. I'd have to say, preferably a man, and said to me, "Listen, pal, you don't know this, but this is actually what's happening here." So there's a long way to go if we want to talk about this issue. And a long way to go to, from many angles, to include men in the conversation.
On that topic, Mike, how much is connection playing a role in your life now? Both with sort of you obviously you have a new partner with her and also with other people around you, whether it's your friend circle, family, or other men.
Yeah,
Like
that's a good question.
how much of that is playing a role in your mental health now?
My family situation, my close family connections are better than they've probably ever been in my life. I have a brother and a sister, an older sister, a younger brother. My mother sadly passed a while back, but my father is in his 80s now.
Mm.
But all of that is really, really good, and I think that's partly because I'm much more open than I will admit
Right.
to being connected and to having discussions with them than I've ever done before. The same is probably not true with my close personal friends, even male friends, because as we know, men are not good at this kind of stuff anyway.
Mm.
Plus, everybody's got their own lives, you know, and they're never busier than they are now if you have a job,
Yeah,
because you're expected to work in a 24/7 culture, and there's huge amount of pressure on families and individuals. But I would say, and I'm still very connected with. I've stepped out of the rat race in this last sort of 14 months, but I'm
mm.
still connected with a lot of my network, my professional network. One of whom actually called me today to have a
Mm.
sort of man talk, you know, which was quite interesting.
Really
So
good. Yeah. Yeah, I think that connection I find that connection with men, and especially I think a place where men can connect authentically, with, and be able to sort of, my my desire really is, the men's groups that we have. Men's groups are still kind of quite hush hush, in that you men gather behind the closed doors, and that's where we can share our feelings. And
in the shed,
I sorry,
in the garden shed or
in
something.
the
Yeah.
garden shed, in sort of meeting rooms, not just office meeting rooms, but like where men's groups usually happen. But there's always a thing that men can only share their feelings in a safe environment where confidentiality can be held, where they can feel that those things won't go out of the room. And I find that we've got to change that culture. It's like, I think it should be okay for men to be out in the open and be vulnerable, and not worry about what people are going to think or say. So that's one of my, like, I think in this lifetime, one of my desires is to create that environment where men can just like have honest, vulnerable conversations and not worry about that.
And we know, and
Anyway,
good for you. Yeah.
yeah,
But we know those opportunities are very rare in a man's life because it's all about competing. It's all about competition, typically, and I mean, in the work environment, and possibly even socially, or on the sports field or whatever. Um,
right,
but yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right, and I think what you're describing is an element of that's missing hugely from men's life. When I think about, and I think Joe and I spoke about this recently, um, do men live an authentic life today? I think the answer is largely not,
yeah,
because there's no room for the discussion around the campfire or the hunting trip with the tribe in the way that you just described. We're even more
yeah,
isolated from other men than we were before.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we also talked about, Mike, didn't we, that actually, fewer, there's a tail off, isn't there, with sports, for example, and not so many men maybe participate in team sports further on in their age, obviously it gets dangerous and you can start breaking bones, and nobody wants to do that. But you know, when I was growing up, my dad was fully into rugby, and even when he stopped playing rugby, it was still a rugby scene, and we'd go along to rugby every Saturday. And I think that tailed off. And it's, I think, all of
Yeah.
those kind of situations, and you know, we watch more live football sports from home now. Everything's at the click of a button on a remote control. So I did throw it back at you, Mike, if you remember, and I said, actually, I think obviously not right now, but men do need to make an effort to get out the door, even though it's, you know, it's had been a long week or a long day, and but to get out the door and socialize and be in the pub, or you know, wherever it is, you know, on the squash court or wherever it is, just, you know, making a point of connecting outside of work. Because I think there's also this crazy misconception, well, I'm surrounded by men at work all day, you know, a lot of men work in solely male environments. Oh, there's so many men around, we talk over coffee, and you know, we grab a quick pint after work. That's not really connecting, is it? That's
No.
you know, that can be a very strained environment, as you know, Mike. You talk about not being able to show up as yourself at work because, you know, you had to keep all that dumbed down. So you know, I think there's, after this difficult time, that we need to manage and try and connect online. It's the only answer right now. You know, coming into next year, I really hope that your groups will start getting physical, you know, and I was trying to organize a men's retreat just before this happened. So actually right now I should be in Ireland. It actually is this very weekend coming. I should be in Ireland hosting a male retreat for up to 10 men in this beautiful part of Ireland, offering a chance to reconnect with nature through fire walking, arrow breaking, deep work, meditation, just being really grounded, to sort of, you know, really kickstart their natural selves. But you know, all of that sort of stuff needs to happen more and more. And there's retreats galore. You can get retreats on every way, shape, or form for women. We need more. I don't actually like the word retreat. I think it sounds a bit. It sounds like we're going back in ourselves. But anyway, a time and space for men to collaborate and connect physically. So there you go, Kapil. Something else for you to organise for next year. I know you have
It's
to
all in
do
the works. It's all in the works. Yeah, well, I think we're almost 40 minutes into the talk, so I think that's a good place to wrap up. I think wish and hope for men to connect with each other and share, whether it's in retreat form, whether online or somewhere, but just like finding other men to like try and open up and share ourselves, especially if we need some kind of support, then not wait before it's too long. Mike, Joe, do you want to say any last words before we finish off, Mike?
No, I appreciate the opportunity to chat to you. Yeah, connecting with other men. I did have men in my lifeboat way back when, and I guess you now call that a WhatsApp group.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Well,
Thanks,
I'd
Mike.
just like to ask you, Kapil, to mention your because you create men's groups. So I'm
Yeah.
going to throw it back at you and say I'd just love you to tell anyone watching, listening, what your groups are, and the book will be out in November. Very exciting. But yeah, because you know, you offer these very groups right now, don't you? So
Yeah, I organize a virtual men's group every Tuesday evening. And it's through a Facebook group I have called Integrated Man. And so that's great. And the other thing that I do is we have a talk, a series that we created, me and a couple of other guys. It's called Man Up Talks, Uplifting Talks for Men. And it's essentially a panel discussion kind of thing, which is everything about men and our relationship, our sexuality, our feelings and emotions. And it's all focused on men, but all men and women are welcome to be part of the conversation. But the conversation is focused only on men. So we're actually organizing another talk hopefully on 9th of December. So there'll be more info about that in the coming days. We're just finalizing the topic. And I think the next one that we're going to organize is going to be around, especially in this time with COVID and pandemic, what does healthy masculinity look like? Not the conditioned masculinity, but what healthy integrated masculinity looks like. And so that hopefully that'll be quite a rich discussion there. For me, it's like it's all about the masculine and the feminine traits, and how can we have more of all of the traits, not necessarily that we have to be more masculine or more feminine, etc., etc. Because I think being able to connect with our feelings and emotions and sensitivity and vulnerability is absolutely critical for everyone, because that's where we get the nourishment for our soul. So yeah, thanks for asking me that question.
Thanks for hosting.
Yeah, cool. Well, thanks everyone, whoever has been watching. So the book, look out for the book. It'll be out hopefully on the 30th of November, if not a few days after that. And we'll be doing these lives more often in the next one is in a couple of weeks, but we might be doing this weekly. So if you have any questions, any comments, please post them under the video. And speak soon. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Joe. Speak soon.
Thanks,
Take care.
guys.
Bye.
See you. Bye.